time. Hello, I would like to call to order the Salem Kaiser Area Transportation Study SCAT for Tuesday, May 23rd, 2023. And we will go through roll call for the records. I'm Kathy Clark for the City of Kaiser. For Brandon.
Brandon Williams, ODOT Region 2.
Trevor.
Trevor Phillips, Counselor, City of Salem.
Maria.
Maria Hinojos Pressy, Board Director, Salem Kaiser Schools.
Steve.
Steve Horning, Mayor of Turner.
Lyle.
Lyle Motors, Polk County Commissioner.
Sadie.
Sadie Carney, Salem Kaiser Transit, Subdistrict 3.
And for the record, Kevin Cameron did notify us that he will not be able to attend today, representing Marion County. All right, the first order of business is approval of the Policy Committee meeting minutes from April 25th, 2023. Were there any additions or corrections to note?
I had
Hearing
some.
none?
Oh,
Sadie?
sorry. I had some questions. Sorry, I couldn't get my hand raised in time. Here, let me try coming off camera just in case I'm stable again. If I get choppy, please let me know. I was just reviewing the minutes, and I don't know if this is the appropriate time to ask staff for a follow-up on the comments made by Counselor Phillips about the SCATS Policy Committee voting structure. It says that the SCAT staff had contacted other MPOs in Oregon to get information about their representation and voting structure. And this will be covered at a future policy committee meeting. So I was just wondering if we could get a quick update from SCAT staff on that, and then maybe a plan with the chair to agenda that item.
So yeah, let's take care of the minutes and then we can follow up with that. Anything else for the minutes? Motion to approve as presented.
I move to approve.
Second.
Moved by Sadie, seconded by Trevor. Any further discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
I did have one other point of discussion, and I just wanted to say thank you to the SCAT staff for adding footnotes in the minutes document referencing the documents that are mentioned therein and putting a link to them where they live on the site. This is like a huge win for me personally, but also a big step forward in accessibility on our documents and allowing people to like navigate them and see where they live online. So just thank you so much for doing that work. Bravo. If it is in response to anything I said, double thank you.
All right, thank you very much. And I would agree with the thumbs up across the board. Do we want to take up that one? Okay, we'll just real quick on the voting structure.
Yeah, so very briefly, we haven't picked which month. It'll probably be, could be July, could be August when we have our first discussions about adding Almsville to our MPO, and then any discussion about the voting or structure that goes in as part of the cooperative agreement. So we're meeting with the Almsville City Manager Thursday to talk to him a little bit about what happens when Almsville's added to the MPO. And then, like I said, we have contacted all the other MPOs. We'll have a summary of what they do as far as the voting structure, so you can see what other MPOs are going to do. And then it'll really be your discussion about whether you just want to simply add Almsville to the MPO without changing the voting structure, which is one vote for jurisdictions, or whether you want to have a discussion about it. And it might happen as soon as July. I think confer with my staff about which month is the best to go forward with that. And we have, I guess, until most of the year to figure this out. So.
And as a side note, if any of you all know that you are going to be gone because this vacation thing is totally happening this year, please send an email to Mike or to Teresa so that they can keep track. And if we're going to have a quorum issue, then we'll know sooner rather than later.
Oh, and Chair, I imagine this is not going to be a one meeting issue. So, if you miss a meeting, yeah, I'd like to have someone, an alternate show up. But it'll be a more than one meeting discussion. I imagine first we'll have discussions and then maybe take a couple meetings of discussions and then a decision. So in fact, we've had some discussions about getting a facilitator if needed to have that, to really kind of work through the issue.
Okay, that'll be a decision for the policy committee to make at that
Yeah.
point.
Did that answer people's questions? I didn't want to go into depth, but I want people to be aware of what our plans are.
Perfect.
Very much. Thank you.
All right, we'll go on then to public comment. Time is provided for members of the public to address the policy committee on items not on the schedule for a public hearing. So if you are here for either D, which is the public hearing regarding the Metropolitan Transportation Plan, or E, the public hearing regarding the Transportation Improvement Program, then stand by. Other than that, floor is open.
Chair, can I ask a question real quick?
Yes.
We have somebody who just joined the meeting under HYM 25E. Can I get that person to identify themselves?
This is Sunny Chickering. I'm the ODOT Region 2 manager.
Hey, Sunny.
Hello.
Thank you.
All right, Highwayman 25E. All right. Anybody have their hand up or would like, oh, yes, we do. Come on up. And if you would give your name, city of residence, and any affiliation for the record, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Chair Clark and, people, my name is Laura Doherty and I'm a coordinator for 350 Salem, Oregon. And other coordinator, Bill Carver, and I both submitted written comments, and so I'm not gonna, read the whole thing out. I'll just try to be brief and, touch some highlights. Bill is out of town today. So we wasn't able to do this. But we are very concerned about the fact that the plan, the 2050 plan, includes a lot of increased capacity for cars. And that is a recipe not for reducing congestion, but for inducing demand. In other words, people will change their driving habits. They will move to different places where they can drive farther. And this is called induced demand. And Phil's testimony that he submitted on May 14th by email has several articles that academic research that testify to this phenomenon of induced demand. So you're not going to solve the congestion problem. You're just going to create more traffic, and there will be eventually, it will just become as congested as it ever was. So we're concerned with a lot of the projects that involve adding lanes, turn lanes, and that's what just increase speeds, make it more convenient for cars, make it less safe for everybody. Safety is one of my particular concerns because I don't have a car. I walk, I bike, I take transit. I live like 6.5 blocks from here. I just walked here and I went through 2 intersections, including the one right outside this building, where pedestrians have been killed within the last 2 years. And there's another one right down the street by Riverfront Park. So I'm very concerned about safety for biking, for pedestrians, for older people who have to take a long time to cross the street, for people in wheelchairs, with mobility challenges that have difficulty, doing turning lanes. Almost seem to me, when I observe cars, to be sort of like a permission to just swoop around the corners. And that's the conditions in which what I was talking about, the pedestrians that were killed downtown. We also have, Phil mentioned some particular concerns in terms of the according to the beltway, which is not needed. There is not, there's not a need to increase the capacity on that road because you will just do what I was talking about, which you will end up with when you start with a congested area, just like it was. The other one that he brought up was the big interchange that is going to be funded out on 22 going west by 51, and he presented some ideas for much less costly and less, less costly solutions to that intersection to make it safer in terms of traffic lights, possibly a roundabout, things like that. So we are very concerned. In the draft plan that was put out, quite a while ago, Phil and I and one of our other members sat down with that whole list and went through it one by one. We took a couple of hours, 3 different times. We went through every one of them and we looked at things where there was increasing capacity. I'm sorry, I don't see a timer, so I don't know where I'm at.
Yeah, I don't know where.
You just hit 3 minutes.
Okay,
I'm
so
not
you're
sure
at
where
your
it's
time.
at. Okay, so you can look at the testimony that we submitted in writing, and there's also references that you can see, and thank you for the opportunity to speak.
All right, thank you very much. So, Laura, was this your intention for it to be part of the public hearing regarding the adoption of the Metropolitan Transportation Plan? Or the TIP? Was your testimony, did you intend for that to be part of the public hearing for the Metropolitan Transportation Plan and the Transportation Improvement Plan?
I'm sorry.
So the plans you spoke about in your testimony had to do with the MTP, Metropolitan Transportation Plan.
Yeah, the 2050 transportation plan. That's
Okay, that's what I need to know.
Also, I would like to know how the safety survey that you which I participated in and made lots of comments.
We'll come to that.
But is that going to be integrated with the transportation project? I mean, how are you going to do that?
Thank you. All right.
Thank you.
So what I'm going to do now is to add the testimony to the public hearing for the recommended adoption of the SCAS 2023-2050 Metropolitan Transportation Plan by reference. And I'm going to go ahead. Is there anybody who wants to address the policy committee not part of the public hearing? Because I didn't see anybody's hand go up. So I'm going to go ahead and formally open the public hearing for the adoption of the SCAS 2023-2050 Metropolitan Transportation Plan, MTP, of the Associated Air Quality Conformity Determination, the AQCD. And our first item is to turn over to Ray for the staff presentation.
Thank you. To start off the public hearing, I'll just do a brief overview presentation of the plan and what we've done. So during this presentation, I'll talk about the purpose of the update, the process that we followed for updating the plan, provide a very brief overview of the chapters and appendices that make up the Metropolitan Transportation Plan, and then discuss the public outreach and comments that we've received through that process. And then we'll continue with the public hearing with the discussion and comment period. The purpose of the update, as you all know, the long-range plan is required by the federal legislation regulations to be updated every 4 years. This is meant to reflect the latest information that is available for planning long-term transportation. This includes population and employment forecasts going out to 2050, changes or updates in the local comprehensive plans to the land uses of where these people and jobs will be located or may be located in the next 27 years, updates to the local's transportation systems plan and transit's long-range transit plan and other documents such as planning studies from ODOT. During this process, we also revised the financial forecast to update the federal, state, and local funds that are anticipated to be available over the next 27 years that will help pay for the updated project list and the other programs that we identify. We're also addressing 2 corrective actions from the 2020 quadrennial review held identified by Federal Highway and Federal Transit Administrations, and these are reflected in changes in the performance report that is Appendix P and documented in the public outreach that is Appendix O. The updating the long-range plan basically takes place as soon as adoption happens with the previous one. So we've been working for the last 3 years, gathering data on the system, transportation system, reviewing the chapters to reflect changes in federal or state regulations, changes in the land uses by the local jurisdictions. And in January, we provided an overview to the TAC and to the policy committee about the schedule of the update. In February, we discussed with the TAC and PC our public participation plan. Here we would involve the public, solicit their input, as well as other stakeholders and agency staff that are not usually associated with SCAS. Over the last year and a half, the TAC has been able to review each of the chapters and many of the appendices as they've been rewritten. And these have been available on the website as part of the TAC meeting package for the public to review as well. Policy committee at their discretion asked to review just the policy-oriented chapters during that. Brief overview of the long-range plan. There we have 9 chapters. We start with an overview of the higher situation going forward. The introduction, we provide an overview of the federal and state policies that drive local, regional, and state planning, transportation planning. We have our goal chapter. These are the 10 goals that are the bedrock of the plan and the TIP and all the other documents that SCAS produces. We have a overview of the existing transportation system and then a discussion of the gaps that are in there that are needed to meet the accessibility needs of the future population. We have a discussion of the financial situation, as I mentioned, the federal, state, and local funds that are reasonably anticipated to be available. The proposed system is discussed in Chapter 7, as well as the potential impacts of the proposed system in Chapter 8. This is impacts on the cultural, historic, and environmental resources in the area. Due to many reasons, there are always outstanding issues that cannot be solved, funded, or fully identified during this update, and we've discussed these in Chapter 9, and we'll address those in future updates. The appendices provide more detail on certain data and processes that we follow, such as the population employment forecast for the SCAS area through 2050, project selection process that is used to develop the financially constrained project list, the performance report, which addresses the federal performance measures that we are required to track and report on. One of the first steps in updating the long-range plan is the goals and objectives. We have 10 goals from the last plan, and we reviewed these with the PC and the TAC in early 2022 to ensure that the goals and objectives still meet the needs of the long-range plan and for SCAS. We also discussed with the PC for 4 months last year, the criteria, which are the link between the goals and the projects. We use the criteria to evaluate the projects to see if they are meeting one or more of the goals of the plan. The evaluation process is roughly the same as what we used in the 2019 update, meeting the federal requirements for a performance-based plan. And at this update, after the discussion with the policy committee, we provided more weight to projects that address safety of vulnerable users, people walking and biking on the regional system. This resulted in the draft list of projects. There was 260-ish projects that were available for review by the public via interactive map online, and also by the TAC and the PC over several meetings in the fall last year. The plan needs to be financially constrained, meaning that the revenue available, reasonably anticipated to be available, is that sets the limit on the expenditures for capital, so the projects or the programs that are included in the plan. We have 3 sources of funding that are used in the area for transportation projects. There are the federal funds that come to SCATs that are then distributed to or allocated to local jurisdictions via the process with the Transportation Improvement Program. Of the 360 million that we're anticipated to receive over the next 27 years, the vast majority will go to capital projects, the road projects to fill the needs and address the gaps of the regional system. There are state funds that are received by the local jurisdictions. These come from the highway or the fuel taxes that the state levies primarily. And the vast majority of those monies go to operating, maintaining, and preserving the existing system. You'll note the highlighted number because I see an error in the table that's included in the draft document, and this is brand new, so it's not in the proposed provisions until today. Local funds are primarily they come from system development charges, and the vast majority of the funds for this are from Salem's general obligation bonds, anticipating at least 2 more of those over the next 27 years for use on their system. On the transit side of the ledger, they also have 3 sources of funding: federal, state, and local. Federal funds are from Federal Transit Administration, primarily going towards buying buses. And do you want me, Sadie, do you want me to answer your question now or later?
Up to you. I defer to the chair's discretion.
If it's a quick question, on the slide,
Was it on the
It
list?
is. It's on this and the previous slide. So I'm just the state budget forecast came out last week, and I was wondering, I may have missed it in Ray's comments, but there was a yellow highlight on the slide prior. I was wondering, does that reflect the updated budget forecast for the state?
No, it doesn't. So thank you for the question. So to clarify, the financial situation, our financial forecast was solidified after the election in November. So our state forecasts are from last year. They don't reflect the new forecast that was just released last week. This was the error that I'm highlighting is just, I need to not type in numbers between Excel and PowerPoint and just cut and paste. That's but yeah, I saw the forecast. This is why we do this every 4 years, because as soon as you come up with a number, everything changes. So does that answers your question, Sadie?
I think so. I would just have a follow on about like when we do see that, but you may get to that. So
Yeah, well, we'll see that in 4 years. So the federal rules allow you to make your forecast on funding and use that for 4 years, and it doesn't changes in underlying funding. You know, currently it's dismal, or it's gone down. In October, it could go back up, the state revenue forecast. So we're we just, you know, that's why we do it every 4 years instead of trying to do it every month or every 6 months.
Sadie, can I restate your question in a way that I think you're asking it?
please.
So, this plan is for an overall view of the direction that spending can go. What I hear you asking is, when we know the funds that are coming in, what projects will then move forward for either additional right-of-way construction, et cetera. And I think that's a separate document. So that's going to show up in the TIP, and is also going to show up in our additional yearly planning when we adopt our annual projects and programs. So when we move things from, we think we can do it, we're doing it, we did it. Does that make a little more sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, this isn't where that's going to show up, but in the big picture, as we're projecting out, is the big chunks of where we see this moving forward in 4-year increments.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Help? Okay. Did I get that right?
Yeah, no, that's good. And that also, because we're forecasting now 27 years, the situation changes. And even if we're assuming that it's highway fuel taxes, in reality, it might be a BMT charge that the state moves to. So, but we're just assuming it will be a one-to-one. So the type of money really is about a 20-year things will be a little bit. So on the transit side of ledger, we have the federal funds. Those that go mainly to purchase buses or pay for new transit centers. The state funding is a large. There's been an increase in state funding. Most of this is due to HB 2017, which provided funding for operations for transit agencies across the state. And then the local funding for transit is primarily from their property taxes, and that also goes to operations and maintenance or operations of their system. Also want to mention that they have been very successful in the last several years in receiving earmarks, primarily for buses, but we don't forecast out earmarks in the future. So we realize that they'll probably get them, but I'm not going, that's a type of forecasting I don't do. Overall, in the projects, we have about 1.2 billion in projects anticipated over the next 27 years. You'll note that about 80% of it is for road bridge, and the rest are for bike ped or ITS transit projects. Breaking down the road bridge projects, roughly half of it is for what we call urban standards. That's taking a paved road and adding sidewalks, some sort of stormwater conveyance, whether it's gutters and curbs and bike lanes. There's also the urban standards with a center turn lane to make provide some less opportunity for people to rear end each other. And then other projects as listed. And this is by number, not by value. This time for ODOT funding, we've changed a little bit of how we portray it. ODOT has a more unique way of funding projects than the local jurisdictions. Number of the large ticket items are funded by the legislature during the transportation bill, such as the Center Street seismic bridge update. So that's difficult to forecast when they would actually receive money or whether they would be in a legislative bill. Beyond the first 5 years or so, we're using basically a ODOT TBD to reflect this uncertainty and the project list. An important part of the long range plan update is, of course, outreach, both to the public and to partner agencies at the federal, state, and tribal level. The agencies at the federal, state, and tribal agencies are involved in 2 aspects. In Chapter 8, we detail the potential impacts that the proposed projects may have on cultural, historic, and environmental resources. They review the chapter after we've done an initial analysis, and they'll provide feedback and we'll modify the chapter to reflect their input, which is reflected in the public review draft. The second one is on the air quality conformity determination. This is, I'll mention this later, and it just involves the federal and state agencies that are involved in air quality. Public outreach, we have an Appendix O, which provides the public participation plan that we followed, and then details each of the events that we held over the last 1.5 years on the public involvement and the input that we received. In the spring of 22, we had an online survey at the beginning of the process, asking people about the challenges and issues they had while traveling within Salem and Kaiser. To solicit input, we sent out 20,000 postcards to households across the area, oversampling the environmental justice areas. We also sent out emails to our interested parties list, posted on our Facebook, and I believe other jurisdictions reposted that as well, and on our website. From that, we received 162 responses. We presented the results to the policy committee in April of last year. The main themes that we heard were interest in safety of people walking and biking on the within the region, traffic congestion on the roads, and maintaining the current system. In the fall of last year, we had a second outreach. This was on after the project evaluation, and Laura has already mentioned their reviewing of them. So we put the projects up on an interactive website. We received 257 comments on the projects from about 20 people. 127 of the projects received at least one like. Generally, the comments were supportive of projects that had walking and biking facilities and not supportive of capacity increasing projects. The comments and summary were provided to the policy committee back in November as we were discussing going from the draft list to from the evaluated list to the draft financially constrained list. We also attended a community event in East Salem hosted by Lacey, where it was basic. We went out and introduced what SCATS is to the public, along with the Safe Routes to School people. The outreach, and this year we continued our free public review outreach by going out to 5 community partnership team meetings throughout the Salem-Kaiser area. These were primarily introductions to SCATS, introductions to the long-range plan at the tip, letting people know that both of them would be available for public review and comment later that month. And the safety survey was also brought up to inform those people of that as well. We also updated the website and the interactive map to reflect the draft financial constraint project list. The draft documents and a YouTube video were posted up there for people to read or watch. We sent out emails and physical mail to our interested party list. We had public service announcements on the CCTV. We contacted the media and tried to get them to post our press releases. Our brochure went out to the Salem Public Library, postings every other week on Call Connections and Facebook weekly or so, and an open house on April 11th that was well attended. And so from this, on the online map, we received 39 comments on the projects. We also received via email 5 comments, 3 of which were on the proposed projects in the draft document. And at the open house, we had 8 written comments and an hour and a half of good discussion with 14 involved public. We also had comments from Sadie, which I mentioned back in pre-March on the pre-public review draft document, which is pretty much the same as the public review draft document. Yeah. So a summary of the documents in your packet. We have all the public comments that have been received during the public review period from March 28th to May 15th. In general, the comments received, they are supportive of increasing safety for pedestrians and bicyclists. They're supportive of projects that provide facilities for bicycling on the regional system. Most are not supportive of road widening or capacity increasing projects in general, or the 2251 interchange in particular. The comments from Sadie on the review draft were suggesting clarifying the languages and providing more context and the need for a more robust environmental justice analysis. So also in your packet is I believe at the very end of it, is some proposed revisions to the public review draft, plus what I've listed on the screen, which I found this morning. Basically, these revisions are correcting errors in the text or clarifying statements and providing additional context to allow better clarity of what we're talking about in the long-range plan. And at this time, there's no proposed revisions to the project list. The second document is the air quality conformity determination. This is required on all air quality maintenance areas by federal regulations. This draft document was reviewed by the TAC, and then, as I mentioned, we had an interagency consultation with staff from federal and state agencies that deal with air quality. They had no comments on this air quality conformity determination. It was also available for public review, and no comments were received. So that concludes the staff presentation portion of the public hearing. There's the rest of the itinerary is on your piece of blue paper. I will point out, remind the policy committee that a unanimous vote is required on for both of the resolutions.
All right, thank you very much. Great work on the part of staff. Thank you all the people who have commented. A particular thank you to Sadie for with the fresh eyes on the readability, and I really appreciate that. And I did note one thing, that this is just food for thought for the future. There was a comment Sadie put in regarding street flooding, and a lot of that, the work being done with our stormwater management utilities in both in Kaiser and Salem, have done a tremendous amount to reduce street flooding because the water is being more appropriately diverted to the storm drains that are now in much better state of repair, or we've been adding and amending the stormwater facilities such as rain gardens. So I might just note, maybe we could link those efforts into this document by reference in the future.
Yeah, yes. And we do have a Appendix R resiliency. We're trying to build that out to address stormwater and other issues like that.
Okay.
So that would be a good place to start. Thank you.
So in Marion County, I can't speak for, but I did see Janelle's on here, and maybe let Ray know if Marion County also has a stormwater utility or facility plan, and that might be a good addition to the resiliency chapter next time in 4 years. Unless we want to amend now just to add references in R, just ask that the links to the existing stormwater management plans of the member jurisdictions be added by reference.
So something you want to do now?
I would like to do it now if we could, but if it's going to make life difficult, I don't want to make life more difficult. But I just thought it was a really good way to address a question that came up in the comments, and that to help people know that they're already being addressed through the stormwater requirements that the cities already have.
Sure. I should be able to do that. Maybe you have that as part of your motion when we ask for adoption, that
Okay.
a brief reference to those plans or links included in.
Okay.
Are.
Okay, it's data, it's not a decision, you know. It's a reporting. Right. Well, it's plans that the jurisdictions already have, and the result is to get water off the roadways, number one, number two, and off of bike lanes and sidewalks, and number three, it gets the water to the river in a cleaner fashion than it was prior to the institution of the required MPDES, and please don't ask me to define that. National, whatever, it has to do with stormwater management and making sure the water's clean getting to the river. That's my.
Pollution discharge. It's in that thing.
Yeah, that's it. Okay, so it'll be Appendix R, storm water facility / utility.
Like I said, I think you should make that maybe the first motion before any any motion to approve the
Okay.
entire plan.
But I thank you, Sadie, for pointing that out. Well, before I go on with that, so we do have public testimony from Laura. Is there anyone else who would like to participate in public testimony at this time? Okay, Sadie, we'll know you're still here. You are not, yeah. No, sorry. All right, I'm not seeing any hands up at this point. Any additional questions from policy committee members? Maria,
I just have a question, I guess, more on the process. So I know that we've got our presentation, we've got the public hearing, public comment and everything. So what is the process to then take all that public comment and all of that feedback that we received and actually integrate it into the MTP?
you want to talk about how you've done that?
Well, so the public comment that we received in last year when we were developing the draft list was used to as part of the criteria for whittling it down and was provided to the PC to direct if they had any. What the right word is.
If we want to take some of that and direct additional changes, revisions and so forth. So it was information provided to the policy committee that we could then take under advisement and then see if we want to take action on it, if food for thought, or if it was relevant to this document or something else, because sometimes public comment can actually be maybe involved more effective in other documents. So that conversation happened. And so what you see before you now, as I understand, it has incorporated the direction from the policy committee with consideration of the public comment that we have received. Ms. Laura did mention something about the safety action plan, and that's actually going to come up under our UPWP conversation, 2 more agenda items down. So stand by on that.
And so the other comments that we received to date, so during the public comment period, are for the projects, there are no proposed, as I mentioned, there are no proposed modifications to the projects. It would need the support of the jurisdiction that is providing the projects to either move them off the plan or to move something back in. Yeah, so really those comments, if a member of the public came and said, I don't like project X, staff is not going to remove it based on that one comment. It's comments for your policy committee as a group to say, we heard that comment and it's your decision what's included in the plan. And it always has been, it's your decision what we include or don't include. So those comments are there for you to look at. If there are comments like we need more of this, that's also for you. So none of as we put in the staff memo, we provided these comments through the process so that both your staffs at the TAC level, but you at the policy committee level can make any changes you thought were important enough to make. So that's where we are with anything that was submitted to you. Obviously, we get a variety of comments, people liking something, not liking something, have a general comment about the direction of the plan. It's really, and based on that, we made some changes, but not to projects as we specified in the memo. We didn't take any project out because someone said, I don't like that project. I was noticing one comment was we need a signal at Radcliffe and Commercial. I think that's included in a project the city of Salem is doing in the tips. So there are some things that are already in the plan and that member of the public didn't know that it was in the plan. So we take that all into consideration in this version of the plan. And of course, we can always, this is a 4-year plan, unlike many of the plans at the state and local level, we update these plans fairly frequently.
Maria, did that help?
I mean, yeah, it helps. I mean, and I fully understand that we, as the policy committee, have the authority to adjust as we see fit. I was mostly wondering because it seems like we have a very reoccurring theme of not expanding the roadways. And so I was really interested in knowing, like, is that something that we could look into, like some of these projects of if the public is coming to us and pushing so strongly that we have multiple comments, both in the open house, like submitted, presented orally, things like that, like are those some of those projects that we can look at and say, you know what, maybe they have something here, we should just take another look at it.
Many, if you recall the graph that I showed, many of the projects that we're doing that may be considered as, you know, or expanding roadways, I'd really need to talk with Bill and the 350 folks about what they consider expanding a roadway or not. Many of those are taking a roadway that has no other, it facilitates driving, but does not facilitate safe walking or biking. Or it lacks, and it could be the turn lane, center turn lane is expanding the capacity by moving the people who are going to turn into a position where they can do so without being causing slowdowns or going in front of traffic or whatever. So there's, some of this is vocabulary based. Yeah, but the vast majority of the projects in the plan do not significantly expand capacity or add new lanes. There are exceptions, but the vast majority are not capacity increasing projects.
Not
Right.
vehicle capacity project.
Yes.
But they're complex and they're within each of the jurisdiction's transportation system plans. I'm gonna go to Sadie, then Trevor, then Lyle.
Thank you, Chair Clark. I think this is sort of piggybacking on Director Hinojos Presi's comment. And what I don't want to do is lose these public comments or give the people who took the time to comment the impression that their comments don't matter because their comments are not reflected in what we adopt or what we do. And so I wonder if there's a way that SCAT staff could help us by kind of keeping track of these comments, because we have these iterative public comment opportunities and each is kind of within its own project silo. But as Maria pointed out, there's some strong themes that we're seeing. And I don't know exactly what the tool is or what the answer would be, but if there was a way for us to recognize that and capture those and also demonstrate for the community that we are taking those things into consideration and that we hear them, that would be important to me in terms of the service that we are providing to the people of this community.
And thank you. And we can have a conversation going forward on how with our public outreach and tracking, there might be some ways to continue to enhance that as a one thought. Trevor, Councilor Phillips.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate my colleagues' comments so far. I have several thoughts that I may not remember to get through my entire list. I'll try to be brief. One, Chair Clark, I think I'm supportive of your suggestions regarding, highlighting and linking to communication on stormwater management. I think it's an underappreciated aspect of when we make updates to roads. So I think that's a really good idea. And if you have a motion, I would be potentially prepared to second it. Two, I appreciate the comments of member Hinojos Presi and Carney. And there's a new concept that I'm bumping into as a counselor who's following, like the McGilchrist update that's happening here in Salem. And that concept or the term or phrase that I'm learning is value engineering. So my question to staff is that something that we're already doing by the guidelines that we've set previously? Because we have a lot of scoring that we've designed over time. So is there a way, like, one, are we doing the equivalent of, or are we doing value engineering already? And then I think it would just be a kind of a re-asking of the question that member Carney said and host Pressy said. How do we tell that to the community members who are helping us, get this information?
Okay, so value engineering is something that the local jurisdictions or their contractors will do as they're developing the project. So as they go forward, either they will do that once they realize that, costs are increasing, or they need to cut costs in some way. So it's I think it's just a standard way of developing a project. It's not really done at the 30,000 foot level for the long range plan, because we're still a ways out from a project being built. More it impacts when the tip is being developed, as you've seen over the months, and you will see, unfortunately, going into the future, that these are project costs are usually increasing more than the funds available to complete them. And so value engineering comes in and rears its head, and things get cut back and forth, which is a horrible metaphor. But that's the second part was where is it going?
About capturing the notions that have been proposed.
Oh, good. So two comments on that. First, we capture all the comments, and of course they're in Appendix O for everyone to review going forward. Also, we can, as mentioned, we can have further discussions of how these public comments are changing over time, or if they are. Third, the local jurisdictions from which all our projects come from are about to embark on updating their long-range plans. So Turner's transportation system plan is started, or will start very soon, on updating for the first time in, I think, a decade. Kaiser and Salem's will be updated in the near future, as will Marion County. So that's another means for the public to provide input at a level to influence which projects are at the local TSPs, which will then influence what would be in our long range plan.
Is that good, Lyle?
Yeah.
I would just say thank you. I mean, I think it's helping me understand and clarify these concepts that I'm still learning. And I appreciate that this point is still that big, 50,000 foot view. So thank you for those follow-up questions or answers.
Thank you, Counselor. Commissioner Morthorst. Now go to Sadie.
And thank you. And I do love the comments and discussion, because this helps a lot of us understand how this system works and stuff. So I just want to point out that this plan in front of us that we're looking to adopt, this has been put together with a lot of public comments to get us to this point. Now we've just added some more, so we can add this to what we've already got that describes the layout we have in front of us today. A lot of those people never commented because they like what they saw in this SCAT. So they said, we're good with this. We don't need to comment. Others commented for the first time, seeing a project described in a very short abbreviation. And their comments were, we've never seen a pedestrian or bicycle on that walkway. Why waste this money? We need to put it somewhere else. But yet, for those people involved, we understand the importance of those safety projects for pedestrians and bicycles in those areas of our schools and in the congested areas, to make it safer for us to use those alternative motives and to enhance the bicycling and pedestrians. That's all in this already. One of the comments was Highway 22 and 51. They should put a roundabout instead of an overpass or a light. All of those things have been looked at already, but for safety reasons and for volume reasons, they just wouldn't work. That's where we've got to this point here. But all of that stuff is where the people can still comment on those projects as they come to fruition. But at the same time, this was a lot of work to get to this point and a lot of public comment already. So I don't know if we need to adjust anything, but we definitely need to respect their comments and take a look at them and then keep them in our forefront moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. One more from Dr. Carney.
Thank you, Chair Clark. I appreciate those comments, Lyle. Exactly. And to your point about bike lanes, I recently, one of City of Salem staff made a comment on a tour that I was on about bike lanes and not seeing anybody using them. And they were like, but there are 3 blocks of bike lanes that are isolated from a complete network of safe transportation for cyclists in the middle of downtown. So it would be like putting a parking lot with no road to get to it and saying, why isn't anybody using that parking lot? Anyway, sorry, not my comments. So I just want to make sure that I am straight in what I am doing here today as a policy committee member. So we are adopting the 2023-2050 MTP at the end of this public hearing. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And we're adopting it without seeing the revised language that includes the community comment that has gone into it, and we are taking it on assumption that it is reflected and present.
If you have additional changes you want to make based on what we heard today, we can do that. We do have one correction for a number, and I'm going to be proposing the amendment of the references to the stormwater. So, and then the corrections that were included are in our packet. So yes, those are in there.
Well, and to clarify, none of the there were no public comments on the document. The only person who commented on the document was you, Sadie, and the proposed revisions are attachment 9 of your packet, so they're the last 6 pages.
Right.
So
That had all of the language recommendations.
yeah, so it has the corrections that were identified, some revisions as you suggested. Also in Appendix O, when we close this and finalize that, there will also be a list of what we did with the public comments. So it lists the public comments, and it says for the projects they were provided to the PC for their consideration, or if there was a comment on the document from yourself, what we did with that, how it was integrated into the revised wording.
Okay.
Question?
So I'm hoping so. Can you, I guess maybe I didn't take a close enough look at that attachment. Can you point me to the page number in our packet by any chance?
So
Agenda item D, I don't know if it's a hot link on the agenda.
I didn't notice that the agenda was indexed that way.
They're not, you have to scroll there.
Oh,
it's probably
Have to scroll through, yeah.
okay. Yeah.
just to look at the hard copy version of that agenda item. Not every page in that agenda item has a number in the corner because it's like separate documents all kind of stapled together.
Gotcha.
But the last document, which is 8 pages.
Page 44
Yeah,
in the PDF.
yeah.
Okay.
It's about
Thank
8
you,
pages,
Kim.
Eight
Thank you,
pages
Steve.
of draft, 8 pages of revisions to the document.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I bet most of them are probably from Sadie's
Yeah.
edits. Well, 90%. Yeah. There's
Okay.
and going forward on our PDFs, if you look at the bookmarks, we'll try to have them so that it's easier to click. And the proposed revisions are shown under the bookmark section side of the Acrobat.
Right, so attachment 9, for those who are watching or listening to this later, it's attachment 9 under agenda item D, and that is titled Proposed Revisions to the Public Review Draft of the SCAT 2023-2050 Metropolitan Transportation Plan.
Mm-hmm.
So they're all
Thank
there.
you. This is very helpful. It would be, it's difficult for me to kind of like internalize them without doing a side by side. I don't know if it would be possible or how difficult it would be, but like a red line version might really help us see where the changes have been made. But we obviously can't get to that today.
And yeah, having it both ways for myself, seeing this synopsis is super helpful. So we have different methodologies of learning, but having that available as a hot link to the website for those who learn in that manner would be a good thing in the future. Councilor Phillips?
Thank you, Chair. This question may be clunky, so I apologize if it is. It's to help me kind of understand how the various roles of serving in this body work together. So earlier, like in the past few months, less than a year, I feel like we made some changes. There were like 3 considered changes, and we passed 2 of those 3 considered changes on how we score projects moving forward. So we made some changes that kind of re-emphasize the importance of addressing issues for pedestrians and potentially bicyclists, as well as some, trying to make a difference on historically disenfranchised community members. And those that passed this body. So I guess my question is, since we've made those changes, which in my opinion are related to a lot of the comments that we've gotten from the public, is that something that overlaps with this, or is it some way codified in this document? I mean, is it like related but not in this document? Or yeah, I'm trying to get the question out to staff to help my understanding of this.
That's good clarifying question. So when we discussed with the policy committee last year, the criteria, and you directed staff to provide more weight for people walking or biking, that was reflected in the project selection process. So in Appendix C, there's a discussion of how we go through and evaluate each of the projects that is proposed to go into the long range plan, and that is included there. So yes, all the what you decided was taken into consideration and it was reflected in the projects that were evaluated. There are other conditions. There are other factors going into once a project is evaluated, is going to be financially constrained. Priorities of the local jurisdictions are also ones that come up. So yes, it was taken into consideration.
Okay.
Your questions, yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay, any other closing questions, comments before we close the public hearing, and then we'll go into deliberation.
I want to make sure everyone's comments or questions are answered.
Okay, before I close this, I want to make sure any more questions.
And if we haven't answered something to your satisfaction, let us know. And we can keep discussing.
Going once, I'm going to close the public hearing. Going twice, public hearing is now closed. So on the next step then would be to, if someone is willing to put the motion on the table for, actually, I'm going to do one first as recommended by Ray, to amend the SCAT 2023-2050 MTP Appendix R to add references or links to the stormwater facility or utilities for member jurisdictions.
Second.
And that's seconded by Councilor Phillips. Discussion. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Right.
Any opposed, please signify by saying no. Hearing no objection, motion is passed unanimously. We will now refer to the MTP as amended. The next will be to a motion to approve resolution R 23-13. Nope. AQCD first. Okay. So this would be for the air quality conformity determination that will go on to the SCAT 2023. So resolution 23-13. We need a motion to approve.
Also move.
Second.
Moved by Commissioner Mordor, seconded by Councilor Phillips. Any further discussion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, signify by saying no. Hearing no objection, motion passes unanimously. That takes us then to resolution 23-14, which is to adopt the SCAS 2023-2050 MTP as amended. And for the record, noting that the table on page 17, table 6-14 is also amended or updated as noted by staff. So those are the two changes, plus all of the public comment is incorporated by reference.
So moved.
Moved by Councilor Phillips,
I'll second.
seconded by Director Enosis Prezi. Any further discussion? Councilor or Director Carney.
I just want to note for the group that when I was revising, or not revising, when I was reviewing the draft plan, there is a section, and Ray, help me out if I get off the rails here, but there is a section that requires consistency between all of the different SCATs plans and policies. And it seems to me that we lack that. And I don't, without being able to see the final document, I don't know if we have revised that language or pointed that out. But I think it's worth noting for this group that while we are saying in our Metropolitan Transportation Plan that we have consistency from within our plans and policies adopted by this body and existing for the COG and SCATs, it doesn't appear to me that we do across the board. I think it's definitely something to strive for, but I think it bears our consideration and careful review moving forward. And then just a second comment.
Hang on, but press pause.
Sure.
If I could, it is to my understanding that our projects between our transportation system plans, meaning SCAT, and the projects that are included in our local jurisdictions, transportation system plans need to be consistent. On terms of policies, each jurisdiction has policies that direct their transportation system plans, and those are adopted individually. So they are noted by reference, but the policies by which the SCAT adopts projects and prioritizes projects are determined by this board, which is separate from the individual TSPs. So they don't have to be the same in terms of overarching policies, but the projects that are federally funded have to be consistent between the two. That's the way I understand it. So
Yeah, I'm just not sure that's what MTP says when it talks about consistency. I have to like open it up and do a search because I don't have the actual document in packet today. So I'll do that, but I just wanted to point it out for this group. I think you are 100% correct, Chair Clark, that in terms of that kind of consistency, it's there, but I'm not sure that that is what, that's not how it is framed within the MTP. But Ray, I don't know, maybe I'm totally off base.
Yeah,
So I just wanted to point that out.
okay, so yeah, we can double check that language to make sure that we have clarity, especially going forward in the next round as well. If that would work for you. Okay. Thanks. I appreciate that one. And second, and yeah, your audio is doing its thing again.
I'm sorry. Here, I'll go off camera.
All right.
The other is when we do have the opportunity to update our goals, which are in chapter 3 of the MTP. And I think there's a great table somewhere in our packet. It's table 2 on one of our agenda items. And I would point everybody to it as a reference because it walks us through the different documents and the timeline for update in terms of how things coordinate and these ultimate bigger projects that we're building to. In chapter 3 goals, we have a goal. I have it open on my desktop here somewhere. Around equity. But when you read, it's goal 4, equitable. And I think we really need to focus on that language because what is defined in the goal is equality, not equity. It says in implementing the regional transportation system, no area of the region should receive either more than its fair share of infrastructure of services, nor should an area receive less. So that's really an equality definition. If that is our goal, we should change the name from equitable to equality. But if our goal is equity, we need to redefine that. So just flagging that for policy committee members as we move forward through the process.
Thank you. That's a good catch because equity was definitely what we were talking about. I agree with how you remember that conversation, and we were talking about impact as well. So there would not be a disproportionate or a disparate impact on a community for creating transportation facilities. I do remember that part of the conversation.
Well, we do if I could
Yes,
jump in.
please.
We do, and Kim could talk more about it, but both this plan and the TIP as well, we do an environmental justice analysis that uses
There you go.
equity and considers the demographics of the region. So it's more of an equity discussion. If you don't think that goal 2 is a goal goal 4, sorry.
4.
If goal 4 could be better stated, we could flag that. And then as this document's updated every 4 years, probably the discussion of goals will happen in about 2 years. So we could probably get back to that discussion. It's usually an early part of our outreach and also our discussion with the policy committee. Are these goals still the right ones? And is there changes, additions? So we can flag that, and then we can have this discussion about the most appropriate language that the policy committee feels comfortable with. Is that helpful?
Yeah, add it to our list. Thank you, Ray.
So definitely note for the record that goal 4 will be looked at with an eye toward equity and ensuring that our language reflects that. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please. No, it was a thumbs up.
Oh, okay.
Okay. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passed unanimously. Fantastic. We're gonna take a breath. This was a big one. Thank you all. And now I'll get money for a project. Right. Item E, which is the public hearing and recommended adoption of the SCAS fiscal year 24-29 Transportation Improvement Program, the TIP, and the associated air quality conformity determination. In our packets, this is the pink attachment. So I am now going to open the public hearing, and we'll go to the staff presentation. Okay. So now we talk about actually getting money, right? We can't get money without the other one. So I am going to do a brief summary of kind of how we got to where we are today. I'll do the staff presentation. This is just kind of a reminder of the process that we went through to actually develop the TIP. It started 2 years ago where we determined the funding availability. So again, we determined how much federal funds we would anticipate getting over the next 4 years in the various programs. So we started in October, actually saying, okay, this is the funds we think we have available. And we asked for applications, pre-applications for projects to be funded over the next 4 years, between 24 to 27, with actually an illustrative years of 28 and 29, so that we could make a nice bridge between our 4-year plans. We received 27 pre-applications, and then it also included 4 additional fund requests. So at this point, we were realizing that projects were underfunded, and that if you know your project is underfunded, would you submit a request for additional funds? And these would have been for funds that were in the current TIP, current years. So we did receive, based on that, we all talked about the projects, the priorities of the projects, what was missing. And then based on that, the applicants revised their pre-applications, and we ended up with 17 applications totaling 50 million. You can see the dollars went up, but the projects went down. We went out for public review at that point, saying, okay, what do you think of these projects? We wanted input on the projects prior to them being selected, not just responding to the projects, but helping the input into these projects. And we received 100 online comments and 4 sets of written comments by October. We've already gone through what those were. We've talked about them. We evaluated the project applications. We went through a prioritization process that we had talked to the policy committee about, the process that we wanted to use, what was important, ranking safety projects much higher than like congestion relieving projects. We went through that process and we evaluated these projects. We came up with the top list of projects, and then ODOT actually scoped these projects. And scoping means they looked at the estimates and the make sure that there weren't any red flags. And so ODOT provided that information. And then based on that, the locals had an opportunity to revise their projects, especially their cost estimates based on input, and they actually raised the estimates on 5 of the projects based on that input. This is one fiscal reality. So based on this, we looked at the cost escalations in the projects, their applications, and then the projects that were already in the TIP that had not been constructed yet, and realized very quickly that we were not going to be able to fund these new projects. So we went through what were the current projects that were already currently funded in the TIP, and looked at those, what were their potential needs on those projects, and realized there would not be enough money to fund the current projects if we funded new projects, as well as we would have funds that would go to our programs. And we also had several projects that were programmed out into the illustrative years that would now become current year projects. And so that's where a lot of the money came from. At that point, the policy committee said, let's make current projects whole and not fund new. So we actually then we prepared the draft TIP and the air quality conformity determination at that point. And got it ready for public review. We did have the air quality consultation again because we had this unique opportunity that the TIP the long-range plan and the short-range plan were actually being developed simultaneously. We did go out for several things together jointly. A lot of the public comments were joint. Our air quality consultation, we did jointly. But brings us, right back down to now. We released it for public review in March. We've had our 30-day public review period, and we are here at the public hearing in this. From here, it goes to the governor for signature. In fact, in your packet, you will see the letter that we'll send to the governor. And then the tip, if you approve it today, will go to the U.S. Department of Transportation, and it will become effective October 1st of this year, which begins the federal fiscal year 24. The document is organized. I've gone through this before, but it has an executive summary. Chapter 1 is the introduction and a little bit of summary, and it talks a bit about the status of the major projects from the previous tip or the current tip. And it also has some historical information on the projects that we've kept since 2003. This is, again, the consistency we talk about, the consistency among plans, but it's not just among plans, it's consistency with all the federal requirements and consistency with the Metropolitan Transportation Plan, which is called RTSP. And at this point, I'm actually more consistent with the RTSP. And then the local plans, make sure that we are consistent with all those plans. Chapter 3 is the financial plan, where it talks about the description, what funding sources we anticipate, all the funding sources that we receive, local, state, as well as federal. It talks about the revenue assumptions. Remember, I said we started out with our revenue assumptions. How much money do we think we're going to get based on federal legislation and local plans? And then we make sure that the appropriate maintenance and operations of the existing system is acknowledged, and that some of the funds go to those the maintenance and operations of the existing system. Chapter 4, the performance-based planning, is relatively new. We had it last time, but it's a lot more robust this time around. It introduces, performance-based planning, talks about our targets, the performance measures and their targets, and how the projects in the tip link to these performance measures. So we have a performance measure of safety. What projects in the tip will help us achieve those targets? Chapter 5 is the tip development process. It describes the whole process that we have gone through, our project selection process, what we basically documenting what we have done to get to this point, how we selected our projects, what were our requirements, what were our priorities, and then the specific application information is included in our appendices. So we have an appendix B. Chapter 6 is probably the meat of the tip. It is our project listing. So these are the major projects that are in the tip. We have a lovely brochure that we had passed out earlier that showed what these are. Our programs, we have the traffic control center operations that Salem runs. We support that project. Our program, our transportation options, rideshare type program, we contribute to that. And then, of course, the NPO support, which is us. Those programs continue from year to year. Some of them are biennial programs. Then we have transit, a lot of formula funds that transit receives. These are in the tip. There's the programs that they use it specifically for, seniors, operations, capital projects. And then there are our bus replacement projects. These bus replacement projects, some of them are MPO funded, where we said that we would give funds to replace buses. We actually have 2 pots of those. And then they have been very successful at getting some federal grants for some new low-no grants for new electric buses. Those, any projects with those, they're in the tip that we know about. Safety projects, the all-road transportation safety, known as ARTS projects. And you can see these projects are projects that were awarded to the local. So Polk County has one for striping and marking. Marion County has a project for rumble strips and recessed markers on River Road and French Prairie Road. A little piece of it's in the MPO, but the whole project is in because of that. Kaiser has a project to modify signal hardware and countdown timers. Salem got a project to improve some of the signal heads in the South Salem area. They've been getting, several, one a year or a cycle, and we're down to the South Salem area. ODOT has a project to do some lighting and an enhanced intersection warning and curve warning on various roads in the area. And then you'll probably remember the Commercial Street Market to Union bike lane and signage project that is currently in the tip. It just continues into the draft as well. Then, as you'll remember, Salem has projects. These are projects that are still in there. Some of them we've added funds to. The pedestrian safety improved crossings, Orchard Heights urban upgrade, Commercial Street Vista to Radcliffe sidewalks, and there's that signal that somebody wanted. And then the Gilchrist Street, 12th to 25th Streets, RAISE grant is in there. And we'll talk a little bit more about that RAISE grant. Kaiser, the Verta Lane project is working its way through at the sidewalk, bike lane, and a little bit of a realignment on Claxter. Marion County's projects include the Center Street turn lane, bike lanes, and the sidewalk, Connecticut Avenue, a bike lane and sidewalk project, and then the State Street kind of urban upgrade, which would again be a center turn lane, bike lanes, and sidewalks. The Delaney Road Battle Creek Bridge project, it's in there because it's in our illustrative years. This is the one that we had to push out in order to make sure there was enough funding to cover some of the cost overruns. And then ODOT got some projects in there. The Oregon 22 Rick Rail Road to Dokesbury Road, which is technically called a corridor safety improvement project. This is the one where the 2251 interchange falls to this. There is actually not enough money to do anything in there other than just sort of maybe a little bit of right of way in that project. Mill Street Southeast Rail Crossing, that's medians and crosswalks near the Amtrak station. I-5 Salem to Albany, some surveillance cameras and message signs. And the one that you guys are most excited about is the Oregon 22, the Center Street Bridge seismic retrofit, about $100 million. Okay, then chapter 7. So what we do is in the very first, we talked about our anticipated revenues. Then we talked about our program of projects, which are our anticipated expenditures. And then we have to actually compare those to make sure we have enough money. So that is what our demonstration of physical constraint is. Shows that we receive more money than we are spending. Chapter 8 is the tip management process. This we updated just last fall to be consistent with the ODOT and Federal Highway approved process. This allows us to change the tip as needed. It's a fluid document. The tip is a snapshot in time. However, it's a continually moving report, and the tip management process allows us to do it in a public and method. Chapter 9 is our analysis of projects. This is where we do the environmental justice analysis. And the consultation AQCD, we're documenting it there. I'll talk a little bit more about those in a minute. And then chapter 10 is the public outreach and participation. And again, that chapter is where we kind of, as it went out for public, it talked about the public comments that we had received up until that point. This, we will have to add any of the comments we received since we went on for the official public review and what we have done with those comments. Chapter 11 includes the resolutions that hopefully you will be signing today, and those will be included. The appendices, again, are background information, and I don't do fancy little appendices numbers that match like Ray does, but we put basically our background material, any of the project prioritization process we use, and then the outreach of public involvement materials are here, and then what we get today will be added to it. And because we have so many acronyms and abbreviations, we have a whole appendices just to talk about those. So our public outreach that we went out for the public review period March 23rd, and it was through May, I think it was May 15th that we actually have the comments for. We had a short range and long range plan. So I'm not going to go over all the things that we did for the public outreach because they were the same pretty much as we did for the MTP. Now again, we had a lovely little brochure that kind of talks about the projects, because it's projects that we're rather interested in. At the open house, there were the 5 written comments. Again, don't widen roads. That was a very theme, and then very much in favor of bike ped and transit projects. There was quite a bit of discussion, and one of the things that was really noted was that the McGilchrist Race Grant project was missing the local overmatch, and that's a substantial amount at $16 million. 16, or was it 12? $16 million of overmatch that was not included in there, and it's like, whoops. Okay, so that is one change that we are proposing, is that we actually did go through and add that into it to make the project more complete. We received email comments. One of them was from the Salem 350. That is in your packet in totally the letter, as well as ODOT's response to that letter, it is in your packet. And then requesting street lighting at Radcliffe and Commercial. And that I'm sure will be taken care of in the project we have. So I was excited that they're at least noticing that we have a project there. And then someone noted that the image that we used for the postcards showed our bicyclists with no helmet. And that was not a very, oops, well, it tells you we need to teach our young people that they need to wear helmets, as well as our bicycle riders. The interactive map through that archive that we used for both plans, we had 25 comments. Most of them were supportive of projects, especially those that improve safety and facilities for bicyclists and pedestrians, and those that enhance transit. However, one person thought that bike lanes and bike facilities were a waste of time because nobody ever uses them. So you always have your 2 opposing views. I'm surprised we didn't have a build a bridge, don't build a bridge that we usually have. Don't even mention. So our environmental justice analysis, we updated the methodology, and it was consistent. We used the same methodology that we used for the Metropolitan Transportation Plan. And the finding is that the population areas of low income and minority residents are receiving an equal amount of current TIP projects, despite representing less of the overall SCAP population and land area. Now, the dollar amount is a little bit less, but that's because we have a couple of pretty expensive things like fixing the bridge. So they that project distorts a few things. So again, we also need an air quality conformity determination for the tip. And it's required under the Clean Air Act. So we have to take it to the feds and the state agencies and during, the public, it's taken to the public as well during the public comment period. And as I noted before, we met with our interagency consultation group. And at the discussion at that meeting was basically what projects are considered non-exempt from air quality conformity, and confirmed that the 4 projects that we have in the tip that are listed as non-exempt really are a non-exempt project. Means they need to go through a little bit more evaluation. And if you do anything to these projects that are major things to the project, that we need to actually go back out and look at their AQCD and get a new determination. So the McGillcrest project, the Center Street, State Street, and the Oregon 22. Welcome back, Sadie. In the Oregon 22 51 interchange are all projects that need to go through air quality. Other than that, there are really no substantive comments. And then if this is approved, it will be sent to the Federal Highway Administration, Federal Transit Administration for their concurrence. We did consultation as well for the document, not just the AQCD consultation. Basically, it's to make sure that we're not conflicting with other plans, that everybody can be consistent. This helps to ensure that consistency. We use the consultation process for use during the development of the SCAT, RTSP, and TIP as the process we used. So the TIP consultation groups were notified, and we didn't receive any comments. So the document that went out for public review, there are a few changes that we propose to make to the document. So I'm going to ask when you adopt it is with these changes. Okay. So the tip table, obviously we needed to update the table to match the changes in the Oregon statewide transportation improvement program. We have to match our tip and our STIP have to match. One of the things we did is we added that $16 million in the local match to the McGillcrest Street project. Up here we're at 2 and 3. We're advancing the PE for Polk County project and the Northwest Oregon Lighting project. These were projects that you approved recently, and those changes then had to be made later. They were made into both documents, and so it happened after the draft went out, before it's adopted. So those will be changed. Again, we reduced the funding amounts of the MPO planning projects, paid for the electronic tip database. It's just got moved to a separate project. Basically, it's the same amount, which just got moved around. That happened. And then some minor little edits for consistency, naming, making sure the names are exactly the same and the descriptions were exactly the same and the years are exactly the same. But when you do that, you have to update the TIP financial tables to make sure that it's consistent. And then we have to add the consultation efforts for the TIP and the AQCD. We need to add the public outreach efforts, materials, comments received, and the policy committee's response to those comments will be added to the documentation in the in the chapters as well as in the appendices. And then we're going to let Lori and Teresa have at it, and they can fix my spelling, formatting, and spacing issues, which they shouldn't be changing anything that's more than that. So if the policy committee adopts the plan, we will incorporate these changes that we just mentioned into the document. And then the resolutions will be inserted into it. And then any additional formatting and anything else that needs to be fixed after, somebody besides me has looked at it, and Steve. Then we're going to send it to the governor for the signature in June. That gets sent with along with the self-certification that we are, MPO certifies that we do everything correctly and sends all that will all go to the governor. And then each of the local applicants, which really they weren't new ones, but I will send a award letter to each of the project sponsors for each of the projects that are in the tip, telling them the expectation of how they are to deliver the projects to make sure that we meet our obligation targets. And as I told Steve, because I'm not going to do it, we start the next tip in August. So it is a continuous thing. So I am asking you today to review, consider, and discuss any public input, and then approve the resolution adopting AQCD, and then approve the resolution to adopt the tip with the proposed changes. And again, this has to be a unanimous vote of the members present. All right. Thank you very much, Karen. So next up will be public testimony. And is there anyone who would like to address the policy committee under this public hearing? Okay. We'll go now to questions from policy committee members on the staff report or other questions that occurred to you as you read it. We'll go to Councilor Phillips, then Director Carney.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, staff, for the presentation. This is potentially already covered and baked into the cake, given that there's just minor typo corrections. But on our letter to the governor, the letterhead is to Tina Kotek, but then it says, "Dear Governor Brown."
That's when I get my, Lori and Teresa check those things.
Okay, so
I didn't look at it. So did I. Thank you for catching that.
yeah. So beyond that, that's my first catch. Overall, I think this is really good. My comments, I'm following the Gilchrist improvement very closely. I think that this is accurate and it's a much needed improvement for a region in our city. I mean, just, my comments for the record that I want to highlight for our community is that, most of the length of the Gilchrist will are currently slated to have protected bike lanes, in addition to sidewalk facilities on both sides of the street, which compared to most minor arterials actually makes it a bit narrower, because usually minor arterials are wide enough to incorporate the bike lanes just painted on the actual pavement. So, I mean, I've been talking to staff to get an understanding of what this would look like in future state. And I know it's expensive, but I think that this is still potentially the right way to go. I am flexible if there are things that we can do that would be better and cost less. But there are not just fiscal constraints, but, there are requirements baked into the cake getting a federal grant. So, the status quo is not acceptable in my opinion. And I think that this is a good project. And the place that doesn't have physical bike lanes does have bike lanes that are designated, but they're just the painted stripes. That's really just at the train tracks. And I don't think there is an infrastructure fix for that. I think that this is a good plan, if not a really good plan. I know it's costly and people in our community are commenting on this and following it closely, but I'm okay with it. I think it looks good, and I appreciate, our local jurisdiction, Salem, continuing to answer questions from the community. And I believe it's going to go to our planning commission for an update, so community members can continue to engage throughout the process. My final thing is I get the sense that this is maybe more the level where things like value engineering is pertinent, as opposed to the conversation before, which was that 50,000 foot look. This is where we actually have start to have cost constraints. And then it's even more appropriate at the level of each individual jurisdiction or municipality. Because this is where the rubber starts to meet the road, or the dollars start to get divvied out. Staff, am I correct on that with the value engineering concept?
It gets closer. It's
Okay.
closer to it, but we're actually not designing the projects at this level. So the locals will be needing to do the value
Okay.
engineering at the design level. I'm afraid we may be able to see it.
So it's closer, but and I said that the local one is where it matters. Okay.
The
Thank you
local
for
is
that.
where it matters. We don't design projects here.
Yep, got it. And I appreciate that. Overall, I think this looks good. It's encouraging.
It is kind of actually exciting that we went together, so you can see the connection between the plans. Usually you don't see that connection.
I want to say that it's not that staff never makes suggestions to the locals. We
Yes.
we do make suggestions. It's something that should be at least considered. Maybe it's a safety crossing and on a facility that's still being designed. So when projects are submitted for review for the TIP, they're still in their very early stages. They're conceptual. They're in maybe their local TSP, but they haven't been designed out yet. So it's at that time when we have that opportunity to ask questions of the project sponsor to see if anything could be, thought of as they develop it, for eventual design. So didn't want you to think we would just sit here and just accept everything we see.
Okay. And to Director Carney.
Thank you, Chair Clark. This is maybe a very simple question. I think it's just a yes, no. We considered in our previous agenda item, the AQCD. Now we're considering the AQCD with this. Is it the same AQCD?
So each document has their own AQCD. They're a
Okay.
different project list.
Okay,
No.
so the air quality conformity determination is not just like an ethos and an approach. It is indexed to the projects that are contained within the larger document.
Yes.
Okay.
We'll let Ray answer that.
Yeah, yes, basically, especially now that we don't have to do air quality modeling, they are essentially the same document, but they reference the parts of the relevant TIP or long-range plan that they are associated with. And so if you read them, you will see they are 98% the same document. They are providing the same information, except as Karen said, the project list, which identifies future air quality modeling that is required for getting the federal funds.
Okay, that is helpful. Thank you, Ray.
Any other questions from policy committee members? Okay, staff, anything else we need before I close the public hearing? I'm going to close it. Going once, going twice. The public hearing is now closed. We will now go to approval for the AQCD for Scott's fiscal year 24-29 TIP. That's resolution 23-15.
So moved.
Move Councilor Phillips,
I'll second it.
seconded Mr. Morthorst. Further discussion. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, signify by saying no. Unanimously. This takes us to resolution 23-16 to adopt the Scott's fiscal year 24-26 TIP as amended. And do you want to see a list of amendments on the screen just to refresh your memory? Very good. Okay, so as amended, as shown in the staff presentation.
Yeah, do you need confirmation from me?
I just need to know, do you want to see it again, or are we good to go with the motion to approve as amended?
As amended, I think it's fine. I mean, maybe just send us an email, but
Yeah, we'll get the whole thing with the changes.
okay, cool.
All right, so motion to approve 2316 as amended, as noted in the staff report.
Oh, I see. It's another motion. So moved. I apologize.
Moved by Councilor Phillips,
Second.
seconded by Director Carney. Further discussion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, signify by saying no. Motion passes as it must unanimously. Fantastic. Thank you very much. And that is my last official duty. All right, Karen has now completed her task. Round of applause for Karen. Woo! I'm signing the letter, which has been corrected. Okay, that takes us then to item F, which is the adoption of the SCAT fiscal year 23-24 unified planning work program. Mike.
And you get a gold star for remembering that since it wasn't described in the header there.
I highlighted it.
Okay.
Yeah, it's right here.
So this kind of large document is something you've seen parts of. The first half of this document you've seen. The other part is all appendices and agreements with ODOT. But the first half is the planning work program. Basically describes the work that SCATs will do either by staff or working with our partners in the upcoming year. So you reviewed it, this document pretty much as it is, that work program description at your January meeting. That draft went to ODOT, Federal Highway and Federal Transit for their review. They only had a few minor comments about those, about the document, and those changes are listed here in the staff memo that's included in the packet. Really kind of minor changes. Probably the biggest one was to say, do you know that the 2020 census is out there? Have you taken that into account? And the answer is, of course we have. We're very aware of that. And that's the whole discussion about incorporating Oswald, the MPO, and everything related to the census. The other update was that we finally got updated financial tables from ODOT. There were several cycles of tables that they kept adjusting it. So I think the final ones we got were basically this month in May. And that's why the document got delayed a month, because we were waiting for those final tables to show up. So the new funding tables are in there. It's all in the document, and I'm happy to answer questions about that. There were some very minor revisions to the transit section. The transit staff just kind of had some clarification about their work program. Really nothing to bring to your attention. So the one thing that also kind of came up during the interim between January and now was there was a section of the IIJA, which is the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, that said that 2.5% of the PL, planning federal funds that we get, have to be used on activities to increase safe and accessible options for multiple travel modes for people of all ages and abilities. And we go way beyond that normally in our kind of planning activities. Everything from being involved in safe routes to school, being involved in working with the locals on their projects. Obviously, the safety plan is coming out of our planning bucket. We're spending $140,000 for that. So we were covering that already. But I just want to note that that's going to be an ongoing requirement, and unless they change the law, that we're going to have to spend some money on safe and accessible options. I'm surprised every MPO in the country is probably doing this, but now it's in the statute that we have to kind of specify that. So I think that works out for us about $13,000 per year. We have to spend, and like I said, we have that covered more than enough. So let's see.
I'm just gonna warn you that the chat, we're gonna lose. Yeah, we're gonna lose.
Oh,
We're gonna lose people, so we
Okay.
gotta get to a vote right now.
I will.
We got 2 and 2.
So unless there's any more questions, if there's any questions, I'm asking that you adopt this plan. This plan will take place if adopted starting July 1st.
All right, any questions on the unified Planning work program, Director Carney.
I do unfortunately have a number, but are we up against a hard deadline with our adoption of this plan?
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah, we have to submit it so we can sign contracts, and the fiscal year starts July 1st.
Okay. I would say the places where I have the most significant comments are in the section about regional modeling and data. In addition to my recommendation that we add to our ODOT documents for consideration and review the statewide transportation strategy adopted in 2013 related to greenhouse gas emissions. And I think there are some pieces of regional modeling and data that are missing from our analysis right now, but maybe next time.
yes, so for the sake of time, could you get that list to staff so it can be reviewed for the plan for next year? This is an annual document, and then they can review it in light of the other documents that are already being included in the data and modeling, rather than having to make that decision without really looking at the interoperability of those documents. Would that work for you?
I guess it'll have to. I don't see another path forward for this committee considering our legal obligations.
And if you send anything to me, depending on what you said, I will try to respond as best as I can and share that with the full policy committee so you know what our discussion was.
And then we can put it into our discussion early in the process for the 24.
If it's very significant, we can amend this document at some point during the year. It's the whole procedure to do that. I don't know if it's worth a big effort to amend it.
Yeah.
I'll wait for your comments.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments?
I think Councilor Phillips has.
Councilor Phillips.
Yeah, I'm supportive of this. I appreciate Member Carney's request, and I guess just next year, since this seems like a lot to do in 2 hours, if there's a way to maybe split it up or tackle it a little earlier, so that we can, have the discussion. Because I think the questions and stuff I've learned every single time one of my colleagues has asked a question.
And but the good news is the other two we don't have to do next year.
That's right. So I guess the comment would be in 4 years or whatever the next cycle where we get this many all together. But that's a great point, Chair. Thank you.
It only happens once every 12 years, actually.
These are different cycles, so we have to hit the sweet spot where we got them all at once.
It has been an intense 2.5 years as a counselor. So thank you for that perspective.
I totally understand that. All right, any other questions on the Unified Planning Work Program? Motion to approve as presented. So it'd be resolution 23-12.
So moved.
Moved by Councilor Phillips.
I'll second.
Seconded by Director Carney. Any further discussion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, signify by saying no. I think we know for the record, I think Commissioner Woodward did have to drop off.
You did.
Okay.
And so did Maria. Yes.
Mhm.
And okay, Director, Pressy, so we are down to with 2 absent. But we're still good.
So we had a quorum.
Yes.
Okay, but he voted.
He voted.
Yeah, he voted and then checked out. All right. Fantastic. We got the big stuff done.
Yeah, apologies to not be able to stay longer. I have a hard stop 1 minute from now, and I'm going to take that minute to fill up my water bottle because you guys drained the last one.
I got one right here.
Thank
All
you
right,
for
thank you.
all of your work and time and prep on this. SCAT's staff, you're amazing. And I am continually impressed. So have a great afternoon.
Thank you much. So we no longer have, we have 1, 2, 3. We no
That's
longer
why I
have
wanted to make sure you got that.
Yeah, but we don't have any action items.
We do not. The rest of it's informational.
Yes.
So we can email we have the OMPOC summary, and this is mostly legislative. So is there anything you want to add to the report that went out to the group?
I don't think so. I mean, they can read through the legislative summary, probably the HB 2095, and is probably the biggest one because that passed, which is the photo radar. There's things across the board. But I think the rest is just there for reference, unless Mike wanted to say anything about the one at the bottom, on the bridge.
Right, so the one at the bottom wasn't part of the OMPOC discussion, but we added it ourselves for the group's information because it is affecting our SCAS area. If passed, it's establishing a Willamette River Bridge Task Force. I think I've read the bill. Sorry, I've read so many bills, they're kind of all blended in my head, but this one is to create a task force. There's a long list of who would be represented on the task force from the counties and other jurisdictions. It's really to look at a bridge outside the Salem-Kaiser UGB. So it might still be within the SCAS area, depending where it is, but it should not be where we study the bridge. For the bridge engineering study, not for the EIS study we did. I just want to make people aware that it's out there. I bet many of you are aware that Representative Mannix, I think he was the lead sponsor of that bill. So I think it's still in committee.
It seems like,
I think it passed the joint committee. Is that right? Yeah, passed the joint committee and referred to the Ways and Means Committee. Here's the notes right here. So I haven't followed, well, things are kind of stuck in the legislature, so who knows where it's going to happen to it.
a bit of a roadblock.
Yeah.
The other one that's significant is the West, the West Extension Site Task Force. Also, Representative Maddox helped rewrite that. So it's a -4, and that passed unanimously, as I understand it, out of joint transportation. And it also got parked at Ways and Means, so they didn't move it out because they didn't. So that should be able to move forward to both houses pretty quickly. That bill has unanimous support from every jurisdiction along that alignment, including City of Salem, City of Kaiser, Donald, Chariot, etc. So we're really hoping that's 2662, and hoping to get that one through. So we can take a look at getting rail, commuter rail, all the way down here through Kaiser. Anything else on those? Tolling, it's on a press pause so they can rethink it. I think it's a really good idea. There's discussion on how to save the bill regarding the interstate replacement. That died in committee. So they got to do something to get it plugged in, gotten stuff, sausage made someplace else, keep that project going. So there's a lot of conversation right now on how to get that done, because replacing that bridge, if we don't, Mother Nature's going to take care of that for us at some point. So that be built. Anyway, so the update I got from Rep. Mannix was stay tuned and get a hold of your legislator to get this taken care of. And Brandon, do you have any comments on that?
No comment.
Okay.
Wait, was that Dan saying that? Or
That was Anna's thing. That was not meant as a setup. Well, I'm on the record that ODOT is not commenting on this particular one, but the rest of us can run our mouths all we want because we want to be volunteers. So, that. Yep. Okay. The next OMPOC meeting, I think, is in
August, July or August, then July maybe.
yeah, something like that. Okay, so that is, next OMPOC meeting is July 28th. Okay, tip modifications.
Yeah, I'm just gonna be very quick with this. I see Mike's passing out just because there was a correction.
Okay.
And I'm gonna throw it on the screen for just a minute here. But these are updates to the tip that took place, administrative amendments in the last month or so. The first one is was just basically a refinement of a formula funded transit project, just to get more specific details, and then we a bit more funding, about $60,000 we're at it. And then 2 and 3 relate both to the same project. This is our SCATS planning funds for the upcoming year that Mike talked about with the Unified Planning Work Program. We just added the carryover from previous years of unspent funds, so that was about $820,000. And then after that, we took out $20,000, which is going towards payment for the electronics. That's all there and has happened, and those, those were staff approvals, so they're wrapped up. And I did have an error in what went out in the packet, so what's on the screen now is correct with the funding numbers. Okay. We've got the wrong boxes in the spreadsheet. So getting used to them.
Excel has always hidden things behind the scenes. Any questions on the tip modification? Let's see. That takes us to flip. Other business.
I have a non-agenda item to add to other business before we get to those other
Please
ones.
do.
Dan Fricke has been our ODOT liaison for 29 or 30 years. Almost as, it's just like a year longer than I've been here. And he has been a good friend to us, reliable source of information, reliable source of guidance on many projects, everything small projects to the river crossing, to our liaison on writing agreements and working out any problems we have with ODOT. Well, not any problems, but he hasn't been that amazing, but he's been wonderful to work with. You can't solve all problems, Dan, I'm sorry. And I just wanted to take a minute to thank him for being a good friend to us as an MPO and just a wonderful guy to work with. So I want to give a round of applause to Dan for many years. He's retiring. We had a party. Well, ODOT had a party for him last week that I attended, and everyone agrees with what I just said, that he's a good guy. And if you like the Beavers, he's even a better guy. So thank you, Dan.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you, Brandon, for agreeing to step into the role. You're a brave man. He's been warned. I have fair warning.
You did it anyway.
And
Awesome.
And as hinted, this is also the last meeting you have to see Karen Odenthal. She's been here not as long as Dan, but 9+ years, getting close to 10, but did it
Yeah.
reach 10?
Not
Didn't reach
didn't
10.
quite reach 10.
And you all know how we feel about Karen. She's been a wonderful addition to our staff, wonderful person to work with. Whatever you ask her to do, she's willing to jump in, whether it's the annual meeting or the redesign of the office space or anything else. She says, sure, let me help you with that. So we're going to miss her terribly. We are having a retirement party for her on the last day of the month, which is Kim.
31st,
Thank
Wednesday.
you. Wednesday, 4 to 6
Here.
here, and cake and cupcakes will be provided. And we both me to come by and say goodbye to Karen, or send her an email if you can't make it. So, but I wanted to thank her also for the many years of service and friendship.
Take care of it. So I won't be able to join you. I'll be celebrating my grandson's birthday out of state, but really it's been such a joy. And Marion County almost didn't speak to us for a while after you crossed over. We've been forgiven. Besides, they got a Janelle, so I think everybody was a winner on this one. But thank you so much, Karen.
Yeah, now we have Steve.
And now we have Steve.
Yep.
And Corvallis isn't speaking to us. But they're a different MPO, so we're good. Yeah.
Moving on.
Yeah.
Go ahead. I'm sorry if you want to.
Yeah, Real quick, another one that is not on the list, but Beth is here. I know she's in her office. We had a walking a school bus this morning at the Forest Ridge Elementary. So I was able to join her and you and Kaiser Police and other community leaders and a lot of kids and families that walked from a local little park area to the school. Identified an area where they need to make an improvement for accessibility. So that memo will be going to the school district and sent to Maria Ruther, Enos Pressy, so she can follow up on that as our.
Are you saying that or?
Would you do that since you have the pictures or
Okay,
I
well,
don't have pictures?
we can work on it together.
All right, let's do that together. I think it'd be great to let her know, and I don't know who well, I've got a pretty good idea, given the election results, who our new representative for our zone will be. So once the election is finalized, we'll also get to that director-elect. So looking forward to that. The next OTC meeting is July 13th in Pendleton. And our next policy meeting is on June 27th. Same bat time, same bat space. And the next TAC meeting is June 13th. And Mike.
Yeah, there was one thing in the very top of that other business that I didn't want to skip over entirely, and although it's not going to be very long. So the federal government has this program, Safe Streets for All, as part of the IIJA. They have $1 billion per year for 5 years. They just awarded the first years of funding. Anyway, there's the potential to apply for some planning money. And I'm developing a proposal. I haven't decided whether I'm going to submit it this year or not, or wait a year. Still working on that. Attended all the webinars. City of Salem is also looking at potentially submitting one. So by the next policy committee meeting, you'll know whether we intend to submit a grant application for some planning funds, maybe even demonstration funds too. So I just want to give you a little heads up that that's potentially in the works, and if something emerges that we feel comfortable applying, we will let the policy committee know.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Really appreciate you following up on that opportunity. And we've got, Will, the work of our transportation safety.
Well, no, that'll continue.
Yeah.
So what this grant would be to supplement that planning work in some manner.
Okay. Turn it into projects.
Well, it's just to expand or dive deeper into something that maybe we didn't quite have the funds to look at as part of this scope of work for our initial safety plan. So that's what I'm working on. What do we want to look at as additional safety issues, just to strengthen our whole plan so we can apply for actual projects or programs. Yeah.
Fantastic. It is closer. Okay, and then finally, some quick highlights we've got for Gordon Kubler, the Transportation Safety Action Plan, as Mike just mentioned, the working travel study. Some of us have got postcards about being a part of that, and the update to the Turner TSP, which was mentioned earlier as well. Okay, anything else that we need to discuss today? I want to thank everybody for hanging in there for some really complex work, and we'll keep on keeping on. The time is 2:14 and we are adjourned. Thank you all.
Over there, right on.
Or,